And we only have Mr. Rage for a few more minutes.
All right.
So before we lose him,
Let's see if
I want
there's
to
any
talk
for
some
him.
Hellraiser, because that's one love that we have in common. And I was asked a little while ago, what movies am I looking forward to? And I said, I can't think of anything. And that's because I had momentarily forgotten Hellraiser. But I can't wait for that movie. Based on the stills, I think that movie looks amazing.
Well, before you get into
Someone who has
that,
the inside track there, yeah, carry on, Tom.
Chris Raposo brought this up in the middle of the explanation from Chris about Mr. H's face. It was priceless at the time. I just wanted to acknowledge that before we moved on here to the suffering that we're all about to endure with Hellraiser. Hopefully, it's a pleasurable suffering.
I don't think it's going to be for everyone, but yeah, Mr. H, tell us. You know everything there is to know about this movie, apart from those that haven't seen this. Give us the lowdown.
So back in May, I released a leak video about it, and all of that has turned to be completely 100% true. So I'll just read a little bit from my source back in May about this. So they obviously advised me that it screened that evening in LA. They thought the movie was surprisingly good, although very different from The Hellbound Heart or the original Clive Barker film. It's very much its own story, which does kind of fly in the face of them saying now it's connected to the other stuff. I don't think it is, unless they change stuff after the test.
Yeah, I think they're lying about
Candyman.
that.
I think so too. The only thing that's the same is Leviathan appears, and it looks exactly the same. That's the only connection there is. There is no other connection. So unless they change something like they did with Candyman, i.e. CGIing Tony Todd's face, like it's unlikely that it's connected. But they said it's very much its own thing, and a frightening one at that. The Cenobites are unique and very different from what we've seen before. Mostly naked skin with little to no leather or fabric, just intricately weaved patterns of flesh, which we've seen, and exposed muscle with various ornate pieces of the lament configuration protruding from parts of their body, which we've seen from Jamie Clayton's Pinhead. It's in her throat. Looks fantastic. What a great, I even had Gary just email me, Tunnicliffe, saying, yeah, I quite like the look of it. Like, it looks quite good. So people, hardcore Hellraiser fans, some of them are like, yeah, I'm intrigued. Pinhead, for example, has two small circular patterns from the box trailing down her throat like buttons of a collar. So that turned out to be completely true. So again, this is all legit. I'm happy to stand by this. The new Pinhead has a commanding presence and a similar feel to Doug Bradley's version. Clearly feminine, but the design isn't sexualized. Her skirt is essentially draping skin weaved with a bit of fabric, and her face is the same iconic design. So again, we see this now. Overall, they really enjoyed the look and feel of it. Chatterer is back, so that's cool. Nice to see Chatterer make an appearance again. It's a well-made movie, though I did have some minor gripes with the lead actress. She's supposed to be a troubled girl with some history of alcohol and drug addiction, and I wasn't particularly fond of her as a character, which is something which I delved into. I said that it's difficult to paint a character so flawed as someone to root for when they end up being the reason why loads of tragic events occur in the film, basically. So it makes sense. I understand why people would have problems with them. So, yeah, I mean, the story itself is essentially about a young woman named Riley trying to rescue her brother from hell. We meet her at the start of the film as someone with a history of alcohol and drug addiction, currently living with her older brother in an apartment near the city. Their relationship is on shaky ground due to Riley's inability to sort out her own life. So this is why he's not that likable. And the brother has to cover her financially and has to keep her on the straight and narrow when it comes to her sobriety. Meanwhile, Riley's boyfriend entices her with a proposition to make some quick cash by stealing from an eccentric rich guy named Voight, played by Goran Visnich. There you go. That one. Who has property stored at his warehouse. So anyway, they steal this. A box is inside the lament configuration. Cenobites are summoned, but briefly seen in flashes. They announce that they've come for her, but will take another in her place. as she's not finished solving the puzzle. So I don't want to go into too much detail. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But loads of people really liked it. In the test screening, people liked it. They changed the lament configuration and how it works. So the mythos is slightly different. We see Cenobites being created, and it's a play on angels to some, demons to others. So they're bathed in a white light, and it's not horrifying. They're on a table, almost Egyptian, bathed in a white light, and scarification and flesh starts peeling off them. But it's not like, oh, this is grotesque and agonizing. It's very much it's again very much a play on angels to some, demons to others. And I'll just flash forward to the latest that I heard. So just Jamie Clayton's Pinhead stacks up against Doug Bradley in a way that she has a similar quiet reserve, underplays the performance. It's what you want in this role. Very powerful, yet not dramatic. That's how I would describe Pinhead, or should be anyway. So underplays the performance much in the same way Doug Bradley does, though there are some differences. This character doesn't show the occasional flashes of anger that Doug Bradley's Pinhead did. She lacks the booming voice we're all familiar with. She instead speaks in a hushed tone, like a gravelly whisper, which has been modified to sound deeper and otherworldly, so sort of cosmic and wispy-waspy, which is good, more in line with the Hellbound Heart novella. She also seems more curious about human nature, particularly when a character makes a decision she isn't expecting, but overall she's powerful, frightening, and grotesque, which we've seen, because if you get that image on the profile shot, Tom or Andre, the profile shot, you can see all of the flesh coming off of her and the intricate sort of patterns and stuff. It's very much a play on the sort of androgynous aspect of what Pinhead was in in the novella itself, and reminding myself what the source originally said at the start, which I hadn't remembered until now in May, how she has a skirt made of flesh. I mean, that's fantastic. So this is all prosthetic, costume work, which I think is amazing. This is incredible.
I think it's available at Marks and Spencer's
in the butcher aisle.
I have to say, those are some really impressive makeup effects there.
It is. They did a great job with it.
So that, I mean, if you have any questions, I'll stay and answer them if you guys have any questions. But
well, we did have one super chat for you, but we'll get to that one after any questions about Hellraiser specifically. I'm just curious to see what, I all the things you explained seem to have come to fruition. Like you said, in the pictures we saw, they kind of sync up with what you've said on not just these, but the other ones, the other character pictures as well.
Oh yeah, I got told about Mask before we saw Mask. It was
well, not
Mask
just that,
looks
but
amazing.
all of them.
To me, Mask, that's the other Cenobite we've seen the picture of.
Yeah,
and looking at that picture in detail, I mean, that's more mesmerizing.
I don't have that one or the other one's handy, but
so let me just read what they said about the Cenobites. So there were multiple Cenobites. There are multiple Cenobites seen in the film, aside from Pinhead and the updated version of Chatterer. There was a female who has the top of her skull exposed like Angelique in Hellraiser Bloodline. The skin from her scalp is connected to this crescent-shaped framework protruding from her shoulders and rising up on both sides of her head. She has the most dialogue in the film, aside from Pinhead. The creepiest Cenobite, in my source's opinion, is one that appears to be in a constant state of asphyxiation, with the skin of its face stretched back over its entire head, mouth visible beneath the flesh, wheezing and gasping. We see the exposed back to this creature, showing us the spine and a view of its lungs struggling to expand with each breath. And there's also one Cenobite briefly seen, that has only the skin of its face stretched out with wires, no actual skull or head upon its shoulders, yet the lips moved and it could still speak. So this is Mask.
That's what we have on screen.
They've revealed this because this is the one with the least screen time. So that's why they've revealed it. So anyone who, just for sort of posterity's sake, remember what I've just said, because when this film releases, this will all be deemed to be completely accurate, just as an FYI. But that was about it. I mean, the puzzle box changes multiple times throughout this film, which I found to be an expansion upon what we have seen before. It changes into a configuration to be able to kill them, so on and so forth, and shut down Leviathan, etc. But in this one, each configuration has its own unique name. So the two that my source could recall were Lament and Liminal. Each successful configuration gets the user closer to Leviathan, but a soul must be claimed as a result. So essentially, you must continue feeding the box to unlock what is essentially the final prize, which is granted upon the user by the god Leviathan. So very much Lovecraftian. It just feels much more cosmic, more in line with what it should have been in the first two movies, I think.
Basically, it's more in line with the comics, with the epic Hellraiser comics from the 90s, where they fleshed out the mythology more, which is what I felt was always missing in the latter movies, that they were all original stories, but they didn't delve into what could have been the mythology. That was very much left up to the comic book writers. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, but I have one question. Is Serbi a character in the film? Because it was filmed in MacLeod. And there's some amazing architecture there. I see there's like plenty of in the cast are from there. Goran Visnich, for example. So I was like hoping that might be a character in the film. I think that would really benefit.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not. It's supposedly in like Michigan or something like that. I think somewhere like that. So I can't remember exactly. I'd have to,
because that would be a waste.
That's kind of a waste. Yeah, because that was one thing about the original film that I thought was interesting. The fact that they. That it wasn't an American horror film. Yeah, they said it, tried to set it in England. Just kind of make it feel just kind of a little otherworldly in a way.
Yeah, I kind of imagine that it set place on an island in the middle of the Atlantic, right between the US and UK and US.
So, sorry, a large portion of the film was supposed to take place in Massachusetts. Sorry, that's my mistake. So I believe a lot of it is supposed to take place in the States. But then there may be an element that's going to be taking place elsewhere, because where Riley lives with her brother is supposedly stateside. But I don't know whether that then crosses over into another area further into the film as the box starts to get unlocked. But I think that they're using Serbia's architecture to actually present the labyrinth. I think that's what they say. If you look at the mask image, I think that's a gateway into the labyrinth, and that's
that works, because
I think that's how they're doing it. I could be wrong, but I think that's how they're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to find out in just 3 little weeks.
All right.